Good morning everyone, today is a beginner's guide to Line Strike. I'm just going to be teaching you guys the basics as well as the characteristics of each individual element because each element has its own strengths and weaknesses. But before we jump into all of that, if you're new to the channel, I upload NGS content daily, so if you do play this game, I would really appreciate a subscribe as it really helps out the channel. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin the video. So the very first thing I want to talk about is, of course, how do you even get to Line Strike? So in order to get to Line Strike, you simply go to Communications, Line Strike right here at the very bottom, and you can immediately queue for a ranked battle, unranked battle, NPC, free battle, as well as spectate other people playing. Now, keep in mind that you do need to customize your deck. As you can see over here, I have a lightning and light deck over here, simply because I really like the light element, even though it's not exactly the strongest deck. I think you kind of need to mix and match a couple elements together. I believe only dark element is actually pretty dang good by itself. As for the other elements, I haven't really tested them out as, you know, as I said earlier, I'm not exactly the smartest guy when it comes to card games. But nevertheless, you can actually have 10 different decks and you can change their names simply by going over here to construction deck, and you can change the deck name as well as change the sleeves for your cards as well as all of your different playmats. But with that being said, we're going to head into an NPC battle so I can show you how to actually play the game and what the objective is. So as we can see here, we are actually going to be fighting against Mary, and we will be using our lightning and light deck. So at the very beginning, you're randomly going to draw 5 cards out of your deck. If you don't like the original 5 cards you want, you can redraw a hand. For me, I think this is fine because I've got a bunch of 2-cost cards as well as 1-cost cards, which is perfect for me. So the objective of Line Strike is very simple. You want to destroy 2 of their 3 lanes, and they want to do the same thing to you. So as we can see over here, there are 3 separate lanes and there's 5 HP for each lane. In order to put down the card, you need enough points. So as you can see here, every round you get 3 points and the card cost is up here in the green number. So as you can see here, Azanami costs 3 points and gives me 13 attack. And every card over here is different. So you can see over here, Observer Shion has 1 cost but 1 attack. But the thing you need to pay attention to is going to be the description down here. So even though Shion isn't very strong where she only gives 1 attack, but her passive skill is incredibly powerful. When the base in the same row as this card is attacked, reduce the damage by 1.1 time only. So basically she acts as a shield. So let's say that I lose in one of the lanes, let's say that I place Shion over here, and the enemy places a stronger unit with more than 1 damage, well, Shion's actually going to block that instance of damage towards my tower simply because of her passive over here, which is incredibly useful. Now there is no limit of the number of cards you can put down on a single turn as long as you have points, and these points carry over to the next round. So you can see over here I have 2 points remaining. I'm simply going to click battle and it's going to carry over so that the next round I'm actually going to have 5 points. You can see that they put a Shion here, so you know, they hit my tower once, I hit their tower once, and we keep going until we destroy 2 out of the 3 towers, as that is the win condition. So since they put a Shion card over here, I know for a fact that I don't want to attack the middle row anymore because it's going to negate 1 of my damage. So what I might want to focus on is going to be the right lane or the left lane in order to maximize my damage, as I don't want to deal with this shielder. And if you were the player on the other team, you would notice that I have a shielder over here, so you'd probably want to focus my middle row as well as the other row, which is undefended. However, this is where you can play some mind games. As you can see, Braver founder Azanami has the ability to switch my teammates' positions. So what I can do is I can bait my enemy into thinking that, hey, I'm going to defend the middle row, and then once I place a strong unit here and a strong unit here, then I use the Braver founder Azanami card to switch the positions of my units. So switch this guy over here and switch this one over here in order to overpower my original intent, which was the right lane as well as the left lane. So it's a lot of mind games in here, and you know, you just kind of have to build your deck to cater to your very specific play style, and there are a bunch of different cards. However, it doesn't end there. There are also cards that can debuff the enemy. As you can see here, this skill is debuff enemy, decrease target enemy's attack. So it's actually going to target these 2 squares over here and reduce their attack by 2. So you have a bunch of different cards at your arsenal in order to kind of play mind games and try to outwit your opponent in order to destroy 2 out of the 3 towers in order to win the game. Now, something a lot of people don't know, and I actually just learned this yesterday from my comment section, is after you place an elemental card, for example, as we can see, Xion is a light element which has a cost of 1. If you were to replace this card with another light element, it reduces the cost. As we can see over here, Braver Founder Azanami, it normally is a 3 cost card. So if I put it here, you can see it will cost 3 points. However, if I were to replace the Xion card over here, it's only going to cost me 2. And this only works with the same elemental cards, alright? And this is why it's so beneficial to build same elemental decks in order to take full advantage of this, as you will be able to reduce the cost significantly, especially those 5 cost cards, which are incredibly powerful. However, they're very expensive, you know, getting 5 points to place down a singular card, versus if you have a 3 cost card already, it can reduce the cost significantly. Another advantage of this is, for example, if we place down the Xion card, since it reduces the damage by 1.1 time only, let's say that it does reduce it, then this card becomes obsolete. I do not actually want a 1 damage card over here, so it's just here to block that damage. Once it's blocked that damage, this card pretty much becomes obsolete, so this is when you actually replace it with something else. For example, we could replace it with this, where it actually moves my units. It'll move the middle unit to the left side, it'll move my bottom unit up, so you can play around with all of these cards in order to reduce the cost, which is why it's really nice to have the same elements in a singular deck. Alright, with all of that out of the way, the next thing I want to talk about are, of course, all of the different elements as well as their strengths and weaknesses. So the first element we need to talk about is going to be, of course, the fire cards. So the fire cards consist of a mix of passive, support, and disruptive cards. The main draw of this element is their passive cards have access to United Front, a passive skill which allows cards with it to become stronger when there are more allies. Fire cards don't really have any drawback, as they thrive in decks with other fire cards and other elements, which makes them useful as temporary filling for the rest of the deck, or acting as a glue which further strengthens your current deck. So the fire elemental cards are kind of a jack of all trades, they're just really good all around, again mainly because of their passive cards over here, which is United Front. This card's attack increases by its number of allies. Note, this card does not count as its own ally. Next up are the ice cards. Ice cards consist of a mix of support and disrupt cards. However, the main draw of this element is they have access to strong disrupt cards with the debuff enemy skill, which can reduce the enemy's attack, allowing you to get the upper hand in the game. The main drawback of ice cards is their lack of strong support. For this reason, it may be beneficial to mix with other elements like fire or light, which excel at emboldening your own defenses. So as we can see over here in the ice element, there aren't many support cards. There's literally only 3 support cards, which might be a problem, as you know, you can't really buff your teammates. So if you build an ice deck, you're going to be relying on debuffing the enemy as much as possible. As you can see, they have some very powerful disrupt cards over here in order to make the enemy weaker, as well as repositioning the enemy cards so that you can focus on whatever lane that you want to focus on and move powerful enemy cards out of the lane that you want to focus on. The next element is wind. Wind cards consist of a mix of support and disrupt cards. The main draw of this element is their access to powerful support and disrupt cards with the skills enemy swap and ally swap. Skills that can swap cards on the field, allowing you to disrupt your opponent's placement or reposition your own cards on the field. The main drawback of the wind cards is the lack of disrupt cards, which can directly debuff the enemy. For this reason, you might want to take advantage of other elements like dark cards and ice cards, which can debuff the enemy's attack power and incapacitate them. Additionally, as wind cards lack support cards, you may want to utilize other elements such as fire, lightning, or light in order to make up for this. So the way that I see wind cards are, they are a support deck. So basically, you want to have your main damage with a different element, and then you utilize the wind cards in order to buff your deck and make it stronger for your very specific playstyle. Because as you can see over here, a lot of their cards buff your teammates. You know, they buff rows over here. So let's say you have a deck that is specifically aiming for the left lane as well as the right lane. Then you can make a deck with all of these different supporting cards in order to maximize that. For example, you can bait an enemy with this card over here by placing a very powerful unit in the middle over here, and the enemy might think, oh, you're focusing on the middle lane. Then you play this card over here in order to swap them over, and that will trick the enemy. So there are a lot of powerful cards over here which can switch the location of your allies as well as buff your damage. And over here, they also have a ton of cards in order to switch the enemy positions, which are very nice. However, this doesn't actually result into just raw damage, as this is kind of the weakness of the wind element. Next up are the lightning cards. Lightning cards consist of a mix of support and disrupt cards. However, the main draw of this element is that their passive cards have access to Base Buster, a passive skill which allows specific cards to deal an additional point of damage the first time they attack a base, allowing for speedy wins if you manage to catch your opponent off guard. The main drawback to lightning cards is their lack of variety in disrupt cards. For this reason, it may be beneficial to mix it with other elements like dark or ice, which excel in weakening the enemy's defenses. Personally, I really like the lightning decks because you get this one extra point of damage right at the beginning. So let's say on the very first turn you place down this card, you're immediately going to do 2 damage to their 5 HP tower if you have more attack on that lane, and that extra 1 damage is actually pretty huge. And keep in mind that you can do this once on every single card over here with this special passive. So what you could actually do is you place this card on your first turn, it has a 2 cost out of your 3, and then on your second turn you're going to have another 4 points, but you can actually replace this card with this card over here, and it's only going to cost you 2 points, because remember, they are of the same element, and well, you've already used this passive of that extra 1 damage. You replace it with this card, which only has 2 cost, because well, you know, you're stacking it on top of it or replacing it, and then you get another 2 damage to their tower. Now their tower has 1 HP. It's super powerful, because literally in 2 turns you can almost destroy 1 tower by itself, which is very powerful. Now moving on to the light cards. Light cards consist primarily of support cards. The main draw of this element is their access to powerful support cards and passive cards, which have access to Base Guard, a skill which protects your base from a single point of damage. The main drawback of light cards is the lack of disrupt cards, and the few you do have access to only have the move enemy skill. For this reason, you may want to take advantage of other cards with high attack power or offensive skills to capitalize on the support nature of light cards. So personally, I've been mixing lightning with light cards simply because I like the light deck a lot, but I also like the blitz playstyle of the lightning deck. So basically, I'm just using the light deck to enhance my cards in order to make sure that I win all of my lanes, at least the ones that I'm focusing on, with my lightning deck. So this is how I'm currently building my deck. However, obviously I don't really know if it's effective or not, as I haven't played that many games in ranked yet. And last but not least is of course the dark cards. Dark cards primarily consist of disrupt cards. However, the main draw of this element is their access to high amount of disrupt cards, and disrupt cards having access to the stun skill. Stun incapacitates a given card for a turn, allowing you to negate the attack power and passive skill of a card for a turn. The main drawback of dark cards is the lack of passive cards and few support cards you have access to. For this reason, you may want to take advantage of other cards with high attack power or offensive skills to capitalize on your disruptive nature of dark cards. Now, from my personal experience, I think the dark cards are incredibly powerful and incredibly strong, especially if you just go mono dark, so just all dark cards. However, a lot of it is going to depend on your enemy making mistakes or you kind of predicting what the enemy is going to do, because the majority of your cards over here are disruptive cards, which reduce the attack power of the enemy as well as relocate the position of your enemy. So you have to be really good at kind of reading the enemy's movement as well as doing a lot of counterplay. Personally, I think this is really fun, especially the stun over here, where it just stuns an enemy for a singular turn and just makes them absolutely useless. These are really fun cards to play, especially when you predict it right and you're like, oh, I knew they were going to put a card over here, and you stun them right after. It's just really satisfying. However, playing against a mono dark set is so frustrating, especially if they have the read on you and they're just like outplaying you. It just feels really bad. Special thanks to all the members for supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me. Thank you again. But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover in today's video. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. If you did, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye.